are starting the I Black Pharaoh movement. As you see here, the novel will be released February 20th, and we're looking to restore ancient Egypt back to its African roots. And if you understand how this has gone over the last centuries, we have seen different forms of Egyptians, but we have never seen this form. Amen. Have we not? No. Did anybody see true African roots in these Egyptian movies? No. 10 Commandments, no. Gods of Egypt.
No.
Cleopatra. No. So as you see how important and relevant this is, ancient Egypt happens to be the only African civilization that Africans have to prove is African.
That's true.
So me being African myself, I'm here to share this knowledge. So some of the misconceptions that we talk about with African people, let's just talk about some of them. Africans are primitive, uncivilized bushmen, live in nothing but mud huts. Even African greatness is always accredited to Arabs, Chinese, or even Europeans. Anybody other than Africans, anything great. North Africa is not considered black African at all, but European or Middle Eastern. Nothing great happened in Africa until European colonization. Blacks are not intellectual. We're only known for civil rights movements such as Dr. King and Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks are the most rendered of black history. It is argued that black people are more connected to monkeys than other human beings. These are the misconceptions. Europe influenced and civilized Africa. Okay? The only people who think that Africa was civilized is crazy Afrocentric black people. This is this misconceptions. Okay? So now we have to ask ourselves the question. After all of this proven dishonest scholarship from these archaeologists, are we going to continue to trust them? No. Are we going to continue? And we're going to see some of the dishonest scholarships today. First, let's define what is Afrocentrism. Afrocentrism, extreme cultural and political movements whose mainly African Americans regard themselves as Africans and believe they are the center worldview, should positively reflect African traditions and values. The only word that I heard there that sounded somewhat bad to me was extreme. Let's talk about Eurocentrism. Eurocentrism refers to the discursive tendencies to interpret the histories and cultures of non-European societies from a European perspective. Common features of Eurocentrism include ignoring or undervaluing what Asians or Africans did within their own societies.
All right, talk about it.
So which of those sound worse to you?
The second one.
All right, so both of them have some extreme issues with them. Okay? But now take us into our next slide, please. This is commonly what we see when we turn on National Geographic, when we turn on anything with the media portrayed about Africa. We see flies flying around their heads. We see children with bumps all over their stomach, big bellies, skinny chests. Okay? Does this make you want to go to Africa? To help them, maybe.
Yeah.
But other than that,
No.
to live there, to start a business there, absolutely not. Next slide, please. This is again how the media portrays Africa. Violence, Ebola, AIDS, mud huts, terrorism. But do you see brotherly love on the TV? Do you see the ancient kingdoms that we're going to talk about today? Do we see the modern cities? Do we even see the beautiful scenery, tropical scenery? Do we even see that? Next slide, please. Do we see this? Do we get to see the African kings, let alone the queens? How beautiful they were. Okay, we got Akhenaten up there. This was made by James C. Lewis. He just decided to make some depictions of how these Africans may have looked. You have Taharka, you have King Tutankhamun, you have Shabaka, you have Shaka Zulu, you have King Mansa Musa. Okay? King Mansa Musa, his worth was about 500 billion, considered to be the richest man to ever walk the earth in gold. Next slide, please. This is what we see when we talk about Black History Month, which is coming up in February. We see mostly Dr. King. You got Barack Obama in there in the center. You got Jesse Owens. You got Elijah Muhammad, Marcus Garvey. Malcolm X is there. Frederick Douglass is there. You got Harriet Tubman, as we talked about earlier. Now, as great as these people and what they did for America, are they the pinnacle of Black history? Because there was Black history 3,000 years before these individuals even came into play. And we're going to talk more about that today. Next slide, please. This is the Great Pyramid of Giza. Ancient Egypt. This is one of the main topics that we're going to get into today. This place is the highly debated place. It's a debate between, are they African, or are they Middle Eastern, or were they European? We're going to find out what they are and what they were today. So, in dealing with this particular issue, someone asked me a question. They said, Emmanuel, what does it matter? What does it matter? If you can prove that Egypt was African, Black African, what is it going to do for Black people? I said, well, first and foremost, it'll correct history of what we've seen history is. Second thing it will do, it restores pride to Africans. I was just sitting here the other day, Wednesday, it was a Buffalo probation meeting. Okay? And so the whole room was filled with African Americans. Buffalo probation for gun violence. And one of the judges stood up and said, why don't you people stop killing each other? But maybe it's a lack of knowledge that is the reason, knowledge of self, that is the reason why the gun is being pointed. And we're also going to talk about that. Now, African Americans, a study was done by Professor Robert Walker, and he said, the working class African American has high self-esteem. That means you believe in yourself, but low group esteem. Now, low group esteem is how you feel about your race, your culture, or your religion. That's right. Okay? So, that being said, if you have low group esteem, you tend to disagree with your race. You tend to fight with your race. You tend to debate. You tend to kill your own if you don't have that. So if we talk about any other race, and we can talk about Chinese, we can talk about Europeans, we can talk about, they have a balance. They have a balance between that group self-esteem and self-esteem. They have the balance. So all I'm trying to do is raise the same balance with African Americans by knowing their heritage. Now you can have an individual who's Italian. They have never been to Italy once in their life. But they can tell you what foods they ate. They can tell you what traditions they had. But if you ask an African American, what tribe are you from in Africa? Do they know? No. What foods did you eat? You ever eat fufu? You ever eat goosey soup? You ever eat pepper soup? I know you know, cuz. I know you know what I'm talking about. You know. So African Americans don't have that. African Americans happen to be the only race on the face of the planet separated from their heritage. So that's what it means. Restoring pride. So we're trying to even that level. As this country say we're the land of the free, allow us to teach African education to our students. Allow us to do so. Then we'll be even in the playing field just a little bit. So when talking about Africa, we have to understand how the ancient Greeks saw Africans. When they mentioned the Africans, they called them Ethiopians or Ethiopians. And this wasn't just for the region of Ethiopia, this was for all of Africa. Ethiopian means of the burnt face. It wasn't a racist term, it's just how the Greeks described Africans. Okay? So when they spoke about even people in South India, who are just as black as anyone in Africa, they spoke and called them Ethiopians as well. Next slide, please. As you can see here, this is Diodorus of Sicily in General History's book, volume 3. And here's what he said, and I highlighted. He said, now the Ethiopians, as historians relate, they were the first of all men, and the proof of this statement, they are manifest. So this is before 3,000 years, not 3,000, about 500 years before Professor Leakey came up with the idea of Lucy. You ever know who Lucy is? She is the first to be the first woman that they ever found. Okay? But here, Diodorus is saying Ethiopians or Africans were the first people on the planet. Way before that idea came to life. So the ancient Greeks already knew this. Okay?
We represent the African diaspora around the globe. We represent the fact that our culture has roots in all the other cultures. You know what I mean? Our presence is known on every continent prior to the European history books. You know, and knowing that gives yourself a sense of pride that wasn't there before, especially for Black Americans, where we only know about being descendants of slaves. Yeah. Well, that doesn't really give you much pride. But with this show, it's so important to me because we're showing people that it was so much more than that. You know, you're descendants from kings and queens and philosophers and mathematicians and people who pretty much set the foundation for civilization for all the other cultures to have come and gone and currently exist.
And we discussed this a lot of times on the Culture Show, how media has depicted on the African continent, media has depicted African Americans to be gangsters, pimps, hoes, rappers, all of these different things, gang members, violence, and vice versa. On the flip side, Africa has been painted as impoverished, war, poverty, you know, disease, Ebola, AIDS, flies flying around children's heads. It seems that the media has played a pivotal part in dividing the diaspora. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And it's been that way before media was known as media. You know, media has taken so many different forms for thousands of years. Plays are a form of media. Press is a form of media. Stories, like in ancient times, they would call a storyteller a bard in certain areas. You know, that's a form of media. And the media has definitely gone above and beyond to keep us separate and to demonize us in some way, shape, or form, or to make us appear less than. And a lot of the times you find that people are kind of, some people, I should say, are playing into that. And you're not helping to paint the picture in a better light by playing into it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the media, and this is why this platform was created. This platform was created to change and to diversify the narrative that mainstream media has created by putting cultures against cultures, religion against religion, race versus race, all of these things. And Shay, you mentioned on your show a quote that you said, "We're all the same people." What did you mean by "we're all the same people"?
We're all the same people, meaning that we all come from the same cradle of life.
Exactly. And that's also an interview that we had with Jane Elliott, and she mentioned the same thing, that we're all one race, one people. The idea of white superiority is a myth. It's something that was used as a tactic to enslave a race at the time that was quite diverse. I mean, the African continent still to this very day is a very diverse place. I think people forget that Africa is not a country, it's a continent of many different countries.
It's a huge
Um,
continent. In fact, all the other continents fit into Africa at once.
Absolutely. For those who don't know, in the 13th and the 14th century, Mali was the richest kingdom in the world at that time. This was what you may know as Mansa Musa Abu Bakari II, rulers of ancient Mali. So a rich continent at the time, and it actually was a time where the world became awakened on the riches that sub-Saharan Africa had. Sub-Saharan Africa, I don't even like that term, but what they call today sub-Saharan Africa had, because Europe knew about Egypt. Europe knew about Kush, but they didn't really know what was going on in Central, Western, and South Africa, particularly when it came to resources. And when Mansa Musa traveled on his pilgrimage to Mecca, Mansa Musa dropped off so much gold in Egypt and so much gold in Mecca, and he had 100,000 soldiers with him. And an article came out in Arabia, and it spread to Europe about the wealth of this black man in Central Africa, Western Africa. And from then on, mercenaries were sent out to discover who was Mansa Musa, who is he, and what is the source of his wealth. And we noticed what happened shortly after. When 1492 came, we know the pillaging of Africa began. We know about the 1884 with the Council of Berlin, where Africa really suffered. And we also know about what happened with transatlantic slave trade. So when you mentioned that we were all the same people, it's very ironic, Sister Shay, that the curriculums start at the 1400s and up. Why do you think that is?
Ironic or well placed? Why do I think that is? Mm-hmm. I think that if you're going to make a people submissive, I think that if you are going to be able to keep the slaves the way that you want them, you have to keep their mind at a certain level. Mm-hmm. Now, if you have the mentality that, you know what, I'm just a descendant of slaves, you're going to hold a very, I won't say that it's like up on the forefront, but like subconsciously, you're going to hold that as kind of like a shame. It's going to be, you know, you're not going to be proud of that per se. You know, you get some people like, you know, I'm just a slave. We made it through. That's great. But that's not the same level of confidence as saying I am the descendant of a king and a queen. Mm-hmm. I'm descendant of a civilization that the world was completely envious of and did their best to break it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It holds a different level of pride. So if you're going to keep a people, you know, subjugated and enslaved mentally and physically, you have to create a curriculum that's going to keep it that way. We know the systematic oppression rolls from financial to educational to the jail system. Mm-hmm. You know, it affects even the family dynamic. Mm-hmm. So if we're going to keep these people in their place, we have to be able to teach them what we want them to know, which is before you were slaves here, you were swinging on the vines in Africa, running with the lions, and then we came and civilized you. Mm-hmm. And that's not true.
The knowledge about ancient Kemet is rising. For those who are listening who don't know much about Kemet, the name Kemet is ancient Egypt. This is what Egypt was called, which means the black land or land of the blacks. But this is what ancient Egypt was called by the ancient Egyptian people. The term Egypt didn't come until the Greeks took over Egypt, okay, which was in the 32nd dynasty of Egypt. So that term was not, the term Egypt or Egyptian was not used by these original ancient Egyptian people. Let's get that very clear. So the rise of Kemite knowledge has really caused a lot of problems for modern day Egyptology, which has whitewashed a lot of ancient African kings, queens, what have you, artifacts, we can go on and on about the things that happen. Why do you think that Kemet studies is so important for Africans in the diaspora to know about when it comes to reclaiming their history?
Malcolm X said, the Black man has become so dull down that he could look at a picture of himself and not even see himself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the fact that we can see these, you know, let's take media for an example, since we brought it up already.
Mm-hmm.
Let's think about Cleopatra. Who played Cleopatra? That the most famous role.
What's her name? Elizabeth Taylor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth Taylor plays Cleopatra, and all you see is this. And don't get me wrong, I love Elizabeth Taylor. She's actually one of my favorite actresses. She's wonderful. Like, you know, rest in peace for her. But you see this white woman playing a role that was not originally meant for her to play, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to be nice when I say this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's important for us to realize and look over there and see ourselves, because we do come from there. We may not come from that exact region. You know, a lot of us don't know what part of Africa we come from.
Right.
But as a whole diaspora, that is our home. We can have pride in the fact that, you know, we came from, some of us came from slaves here, and that our families made it through, you know, the struggle and the humiliation and the torture. But we also need to have a bigger sense of pride that these people were so jealous. They did everything in their power that they could to tear us down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they say history belongs to the victors, you know, and
His story.
his story, exactly.
His story.
You know, I think it's important for people to connect with ancient Africa, not just Africans in the diaspora. I think the whole world needs it to know, for the simple fact that ancient Africa is the beginning of all human life. It's the beginnings of all civilization. Even if you turn around a dollar bill, you see a pyramid there. A shout out to Dr. Shally Ann Ashton, and as well as shout out to Solange Ashby, the only Black Egyptologist. We had them on the Culture Show when we did the radio show. And shout out to my dear friend, Vanessa Davies, who's also been very strong with speaking the African origins of ancient Egypt. But one thing I learned from those Egyptologists is that in the early stages of Egyptology, it was really the goal to connect biblical studies to ancient Egypt. And the first thing they had to do with connecting biblical studies was to separate Egypt from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you make the connection between Egyptians being African or Black, as we call it today, it would be very hard to separate the Israelites from Black as well.
Yes.
Who were very well mixed with the Egyptians. I mean, even the Bible mentions Joseph being in Egypt most of his life, Moses growing up in Egypt and always being called an Egyptian. Even when he left Egypt, he had an appearance of an African man somewhat. Mm-hmm. So they had to separate Egypt from Africa in order to create what they call today Egyptology and promote white superiority. So shout out to Jane Elliott as well, because she came on the Culture Show, and you guys who have subscribed can also go check out that interview of Jane Elliott, where she mentioned you cannot continue to promote white superiority if you can admit that all those wonderful things that we got from Egypt came from Black people, end quote.